Apple Gift Card is a practical gift that unlocks a world of entertainment and fun. You can send it via email or give a physical card to your loved ones. Your friends and family can spend it on their favorite Apple services, including Apple subscriptions. Apple Gift Card can be used to buy all things Apple: products, accessories, apps, games, movies, TV shows, iCloud Plus, and more. Visit apple.com for details and to send Apple Gift Cards to your friends and family this holiday season.
The holidays are a time to feel and create joy. And what could be more joyous than the look on her face as she unwraps a stunning new jewelry piece from Blue Nile? How about getting 50% off your purchase? Blue Nile offers premium quality, priced below traditional retail. Their online experts are available 24/7 to answer any questions and make sure you've picked the perfect gift. For a limited time, you can get 50% off at BlueNile.com. That's 50% off at BlueNile.com.
Saturday, Christmas comes early.
Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone.
Chargers.
It's a touchdown.
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic.
Live in primetime.
Wow.
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Keeping Current with Kansas City. With me, Mr. Daniel Sperry of the Kansas City Star. I'm Thad Bell from the Blue Testament. And we have way too much stuff to cover tonight. So we're going to get to whatever we can, right?
Sure. Yeah, we'll try. We'll do it. We'll do everything we can to cover absolutely everything. And even then we won't hit everything. So
no, never. All right. The NWSL draft was tonight. Big, obviously, story under normal circumstances, but Kansas City is making a big splash again. Pun intended. Right off the bat, second pick.
Yeah.
Big trade. Lynn Williams gone. The Kansas City Current moves up to the second pick. How surprised were you?
I was really stunned, almost speechless at first. I was still driving home from work, and I was just pulling into my neighborhood when I got the notification on Twitter that said Lynn Williams has been traded. I instantly tried to tweet it out as quick as I could, pulled off to the side less than a block from my house so I could safely tweet. And then I just sat there for the pick. I was a little stunned at first. Obviously in my head it was oh, okay, they're getting Cooper, which is almost a like for like replacement position, especially positionally, same kind of player.
Yes.
And then so then in my head it was, why would you make that move? And then it was, why wouldn't you make that move? And I don't mean that as a disrespect to Lynn. I think Lynn's an incredible player, one of the best players ever in NWSL history. She's a great player, but my instant reaction to that move was, okay, not only did you give yourself somebody who's going to produce now, but with potentially 3 years of Dabinia, you have a player who's going to continue to grow in. And if you look at what Dabinia did with Diana Ordonez last year and Caroline, two young wingers that just absolutely, the three of them together destroyed people in Carolina. So just thinking of the players that Dabinia will have with her now, and especially the athlete and the talent that Michelle Cooper is, impressive in what they're trying to go for there. And when you send away Lynn, you send away experience, but you gain back this very incredibly high ceiling. Cooper was a consensus #1 pick before it was known that Alyssa Thompson was going to come out of high school when the Angel City decided to trade up for her. I mean, that's who we were talking about here. And even then, it sounded like tonight that the Current still had questions whether or not Angel City was still going to take was not going to take Michelle Cooper with that pick anyways. And so I think there's genuine buzz and talent around Cooper. And so it's just an incredibly good pickup for KC. Smart, savvy, get somebody who can contribute now. I think she'll be able to contribute now, and also be somebody that is. I don't want to like say will be Sophia Smith, but it projects like a Sophia Smith type in the potential trajectory that she could take if, quote, all goes well in development too.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about her being a Sophia Smith-like player, but definitely has that capability. And even if she doesn't hit the ground running and has to take a little bit of time to learn, Kansas City did quite well without a lot of forwards last year that could put the ball in the net, and they've added Dabinia this year, so that's more goals in the net regardless of how you look at it. So she has a little time and not a ton of pressure. But I would not be surprised to see her starting day 1 or day 5 or game 7
next year as well. Yeah. I will be shocked if she is not in the starting 11 on March 25th or whenever they will actually open the season, whenever we get a schedule.
And you as you're talking about her, one thing you didn't mention is that she's a Mac Herman Trophy winner. And that has a long lineage of great players. Last couple of years was Jalen Howell. A couple of years before that was Katarina Macario, Andy Sullivan, Kadisha Buchanan. I mean, just go on down that list. Crystal Dunn, Morgan Bryan, and Kristen Press. And you just have national team level players across that board.
Yeah, we're talking, for those who don't know college soccer very well, Mac Herman is the Heisman of college soccer. That it goes to say a lot about her and who she is thought of, not only on the field but off the field. But to do that, to win that as a sophomore, right? I mean, she's just a sophomore in college. She has an incredible goal scoring record already, almost a goal and assist per game played, if not more. At just not enough can be said for the talent that Michelle Cooper is, and I mean, I'm excited to see what it really looks like out on the field too.
And talking about her, the goal scoring last year, her sophomore year in college, playing for Duke, it was 19 goals, 11 assists in 22 games.
Yeah. It's
hell of a record.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where, like, you go in and look at even the next draft pick. I won't get too far ahead of us here, but she had almost I think it was like 40 goals and 30 assists or something in 5 years. That's like about what Cooper did in 2 years at Duke in the same conference. I mean, it is mind-boggling the type of numbers that she put up, the talent that she has. It's naturally there. She'll be going against some tougher defenders, right? But I think this is going to translate really well, I think, to what the Current want in their attacking players. And, arguably you potentially put out a like-for-like swap, just a lot younger than Lynn Williams, in making that trade. So also I'm sure they freed up a decent amount of allocation money in doing so, since the trade was a straight swap pick for player, no other anything else involved. And when you sign a Dabinia, you might need a little bit more allocation money on hand to deal with all of that.
Well, in case that anybody didn't see this earlier, the NWSL did raise the salary cap this year 25% up to 1.375 million, and added another 100,000 of allocation money. So some of that might help pay for Dabinia as well.
Yep.
All right. Do we want to move on to the next pick?
Sure. Go for it.
Alexa Spaanstra.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back one step. Michelle Cooper is primarily a right wing, right forward, can play center forward, obviously, and any of that. Alexa is primarily a left forward, with right forward being her secondary option. So we could see two very young, talented players swapping sides in confusing defenses.
Mhm.
Has a good shot from pretty much everywhere. Can dribble to
Yeah.
the inline and cross it in. So
Mhm.
she's another really good pick.
Yeah, I know Potter kind of talked about how they see her talent out there on the wing. Was noted that she can be a number 10 and played a little bit of a 10 for Virginia at times. Um, I the system doesn't really play with a true 10, and Debinha exists as a true 10. So obviously she's not going to necessarily play there a ton. But it is in that kind of, I guess, Swiss Army knife skill set that Potter seems to like out of players that can play in multiple spots, multiple roles, and he asks them to do it, and sometimes all within the same game. And so I think it's just a plus that she can move and her skill can translate to a couple of different positions. But yeah, I am excited, and I'll give credit for Thad for pointing out that she is primarily a wide player. I was just going off what the broadcast was saying of her also being able to play a 10. Versatility is huge with what the current want to do, and I think you'll see that in some of the other picks that were made tonight as well. So I applaud them for getting this one done. This is one too where, like, I don't want to say necessarily she fell. She was expected to be a first round draft talent by
Yes.
most accounts. But for a lot of people, it's one of those of like where the current probably won the draft night, was being able to trade up to take Michelle Cooper and then take Alex Spaanstra with the 10th pick. What left a whole lot of people with their jaws dropped of like, holy crap, they came to play. They know what they're doing, and things fall into place, sure, but dang, that's a really good player to get at 10. And man, it's incredible to see how the team is kind of building out pieces for the future while also taking care of the present with a lot of veteran players in the off season as well, and veteran players that are already on the roster that have a level of productivity that we know is replicable going into next season.
Yeah, completely agree. As far as Alexa being a more of a forward than a mid, I've seen her listed as both everywhere. I've seen her listed as a forward/mid, but I've also seen her just listed as a forward. So that's
Yeah.
from what I was watching of her. I was digging through highlights and YouTube videos and stuff instead of actually writing like I should have been. She did seem to be much more a forward than a mid. So that's one reason I was trying to clarify that.
Mhm.
Uh, all right. Anything else to say about her other than I think she's going to be very much fun to watch in the attack also?
No,
All right.
good.
Next
Keep
up
moving.
is in the second round, they move
Mhm.
15th overall pick, Gabrielle Robinson. It's kind of funny. She's listed as defender mid forward for West Virginia.
Yes, which I also thought was a little bit of a stretch because on the broadcast they were talking about her forward experience was when she was very young within the youth national team, and she did the Peter Vermees go from striker to center back move in your entire career. And in collegiate level, she's mainly been a center back. I believe there's a great guy out there in terms of scouting, and who's done a lot of work in doing this college draft prep. I'm trying to find it on Twitter as I stall slightly
Chris Henderson.
and try to. Yes, Chris Henderson.
Yes.
He had put out there that she lacks a little bit sometimes, but was a let's see if I can find it here. Oh boy, I didn't retweet it, so now I'm not going to be able to find it because I'm sure he drafted a bajillion times.
Yeah, he
Go ahead.
he did every single pick.
Mhm.
I believe the first two picks he gave A pluses. On this one, he gave I think a C for fit. I forget, he had fit and the player. One of it was C, one was a B, I think. And I kind of
Yeah.
understand that because she was not in like the top 10 center back ish
Mhm.
uh ratings for him or for a lot of the other ones. I would have expected her to be more of a third round pick
Mhm.
or fourth round.
Yeah, what's listed on here was Robinson's a solid passer and can give you a few dribbles. The raw defensive numbers didn't compare to some of the top in this class. I think there are better CBs available. Look, I'll say this too: if you're a ball playing center back, if you're remotely athletic, there's always the option of playing you as a defensive midfielder. And when you're that young in your career, maybe with the fact that she's played across all three lines, she's somewhat moldable in that. So I think, obviously he gave them a higher and here it says he gave them a higher grade on the fit for the team, which just goes to show the versatility and the ability to, I don't know, maybe about playing forward anymore, but playing as a midfielder and a center back, a defensive mid. Ask Alex Loera, she's been able to do it, and she didn't really play a ton of center defensive mid even in college as well. So
She did play. Alex Loera did play some D mid in college. I know. I watched her quite a few times.
Okay. Then
she did play both lines.
Got the correction on me. Did play both lines, and no, it's okay. I thank you for pushing that out for me. But I'd be curious to see if, given maybe she's not the best center back because she's a better ball player and a dribbler, does she play as a box to box? Does she play as a defensive mid? Is that how she fits? We'll see. I'm sure some of that will take shape in training camp and stuff like that through preseason. But ultimately, an interesting pick. I still think there are more interesting ones too, further down the line as well.
Going to the fact that you mentioned that she was a good ball handler, a good passer, maybe not as not a dribbler per se. I think one of the strengths that the current needed was better ball handling defensive players, and if you have DiBernardo and Gautreau in front of her, I think you're going to have a lot of that more calmness and that passing than the current had last year by leaps and bounds, I actually expect. So maybe she does really fit in that defensive spot, being able to combine with other defenders and midfielders a little bit better, taking pressure off the defensive ability by possession. Does that make sense?
Yep. I'm with you.
Again, who knows how that turns out? She has to earn that spot, but it might be a depth piece. So, all right, next up, a little surprised that not necessarily the player, but just, again, being in round 2 is Jordan Silkowitz, goalkeeper out of Iowa State. Supposedly a good shot stopper and good with her feet.
That sounds like a pretty decent goalkeeper. Yeah. I don't know. Those are two abilities that you can't really teach. You can try to teach them all you want, but those are two things that just kind of come naturally. As far as positioning and reading and stuff like that, a lot of that comes with more experience. I think she's pretty much expected to be the third goalkeeper if she makes the roster. They did bring in another goalkeeper in the draft as well, so we'll see how much competition there is between the two of them. But when you're 6 foot, if you're a good shot stopper and good with your feet, in women's soccer, that's going to get you some looks up the draft board. So I think it's fine. I'm cool with the goalkeeper here. If you're the current and you feel like you have addressed your key needs with the best player available, in advance, you're picking your 4th pick in the 18th overall, and at 18th overall, I think you can kind of take a little bit of a gamble here and making sure you get the goalkeeper that you want on your squad.
No, it's a really valid point, and I think probably the biggest reason it was taken there was because the next pick for the current would have been way down at 35th, and they may have lost that's a good chance they would have lost the keeper they wanted, or the second keeper they wanted, or the third keeper they wanted in that time, because that's when keepers usually start coming off the board in the NWSL. Today may have been a wee bit different, although round 3 saw 4.
I'm looking at, I see 2, 3, 4 goalkeepers selected
in the third round.
In the third round before they picked. So
yeah, it probably was wise to take her there. I was just a little surprised because that's a little higher than it normally keepers start going. But when you know your picks, right? So good choice, good keeper, and we'll talk about it more on the next keeper also. Let's see, down to 35th. This one I'm not completely sure how to say. Mykiaa Minniss.
Mykiaa Minniss.
Mykiaa Minniss. Washington State University. I do not know much about this player.
I don't either. Multiple people who follow college soccer better than I are much happier with this pick. She is a 5'11" center back who's got some speed. You know, I'm curious to see how all that translates. What are her defensive abilities? 4 times was listed as a Pac-12 all Pac-12 selection in her career. That's pretty good. I think that's kind of a theme with a lot of these later round picks is they picked a lot of players who are 4-year starters, have a lot of experience, and are in general some quality people. She's from Colorado Springs as well, so there's a little bit of not too far down the road type of a connection in that aspect. But an interesting pick. Have to remember Potter has connections to Washington State anyways. So it doesn't surprise me that he's had a couple of picks from there in the last few years. So they did get their one Cougar off the board this year. So I interested in the move, curious to see how it goes. There's a lot of center backs that they drafted, so it's going to be a nice little open competition for whatever roster spots they have open in that position.
Oh, absolutely. Next up with the 38th overall pick, the second pick in round 4 is Ella Shamburger, another defender, this one from Vanderbilt. I love the name. What's about?
Yeah. Chris Henderson says if you're getting her based off of if you're getting the player that she was in her senior and sophomore years, you're getting a great pick. If you're getting her the player who she was her freshman and junior season, they weren't as great. Says worth a flyer here, according to Henderson. I honestly don't know much about her, and I don't know a ton about women's college soccer, and I won't pretend to know a terrible amount about the rest of these picks. So, again, another defender.
Yes. And again, 4th round picks, that's if you're not desperate for players, this is a perfect time to take flyers on players who might have more potential than what they've shown, or coming off injuries, or from a smaller college, or it's a chance to take that chance. That made a lot of sense. It's an opportunity to take a chance and see what you get, because honestly, if any of them turn out at this point, that's bonus. Yeah. Let's see. Next one. Wait, I know this name. With the 42nd overall pick, Kansas City took Rylan Childers.
Yeah. KU, UMKC, grew up, Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, all the fun stuff there. I know her dad's a coach locally and youth soccer. There's a lot of KC connections with this one. Green Valley native, so a cool pick, a nice hometown pick as usual. I believe Potter said anytime you can get some talent from your hometown market into your team, you've done a good job. And I think she's one of the best players in the draft she's one of the only players in the draft from the KC area that registered, but put up some really good numbers at UMKC, didn't as much at KU, slightly better conference, not as much talent around her, but had some pretty decent numbers at UMKC.
I'll disagree. I think she actually had better numbers at KU, but I'll have to go look at that. Because she played with better players. But we'll take a look at that. She moved to KU so that she could be seen better. I believe is one of the reasons she made that move.
Correct.
And
a little bit better conference too. Here we go. Kansas City at UMKC in 2018 and 2019, she had 11 goals and 14 assists, 10 and 10 the following year. Then when she transferred to KU in the 3 years that she was there, 4 goals, 1 assist, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 goals, 6 assists in her super senior season.
With a bigger conference.
Yep.
All right. I've heard really good things about her and her stats, her numbers. The underlying type of numbers are supposedly really good. I'm not going to pretend to say that I have been able to look at those, but having seen her in person, she is a very good player. It's whether or not she can make that transition to pro level. Last pick was 47th overall, Ashley Orkus. Love the name again. They picked some good names.
Yeah, fun name. 4-time sorry, not maybe not 4-time, 3-time though, SEC goalkeeper of the year. Also played at University of Tennessee. She's big player too. I believe she's 5'11", 5'10", tall goalkeeper. I don't know if you can be a Mac Herman semifinalist as a goalkeeper and win your conference goalkeeper of the year 3 times. I think you've done a pretty good job in college. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the goalkeepers in that spot. Do they keep her around as an emergency goalkeeper? If she doesn't make the roster, does she make the roster over, Silkowitz? So I interesting pick with the last one there, but a little bit of goalkeeper competition for the 3rd goalkeeper spot. And I think the more competition, as both, Matt and Kami have said, the more competition they have on the roster, the better that roster is going to be. Overall elevates the level. I think that's a pretty commonplace thought process in building a roster. So good to bring in some competition for that 3rd spot.
And the one reason to keep in mind that they will absolutely had to have a 3rd keeper is because AD Franch has worked her way back into the national team picture and could be at the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. They're down in New Zealand right now.
Yep.
And they will need at least one other keeper to be behind Cassie, but it would not be bad to have that extra keeper in practice in, kind of a training squad that sometimes extra players will stick around and train so that they would have potentially a 3rd keeper on around when AD is gone. So that would, and I don't know that she'll do that, but I would bet that there will be another keeper if not. So one of those 2 keepers will probably make the roster. The other one, they'll probably offer to stick around and train for a while.
Yeah. And I think, just going from what Sporting KC do, Sporting KC have 3 goalkeepers on their roster and usually have a 4th that they invite to practices throughout the week, throughout the season, as they run certain drills and stuff that need a total of 4 keepers in the mix, and injuries to happen as well. So got to keep that depth around. Overall, I think they got 2 pretty decent goalkeepers out of it, especially if they don't seem set on just giving away that 3rd goalkeeper spot automatically to whoever they draft, and have a nice little competition for it and get the best out of both of them.
And with having 8 picks overall in this draft, they have the luxury of being able to say, oh, we're going to pick 2 good keepers and let them battle it out. Pick 3 center backs and let them battle it out for maybe 1 spot, and just see who earns that roster spot, because they're not all going to make it.
Nope, they won't. And they can take 40 players to training camp, which is a lot. I don't think that many, obviously they can't take that many onto the regular season roster. So
no, but I think it's 18 to 24 senior roster spots and 4 supplemental or whatever they call it. So they could have a total of 28 if they maxed it out. Probably won't, because you always want to leave room to pick up a player if you needed to.
Yep.
All right. Overall, how do you grade the draft?
I mean, I'm gonna grade it an A. Not only did they pick some pretty darn good players with the early picks, they made a lot of buzz. They were the talk of the draft. Everyone is talking about the trade for Michelle Cooper. Everyone is talking about the pick that they added in the following rounds and the amount of picks and the fact that they didn't trade out of 8 draft picks. I mean, I said, surely they're not going to use all of them. And they traded one and then traded back for another one. I had 8 draft picks, man. That's a lot. So an A for me, just because of being able to get a prospect like Michelle Cooper. There was a lot of good players in this draft. Michelle Cooper was heads and shoulders outside of Alyssa Thompson, the best college prospect that was going to be drafted tonight. So if you can do that, props to you. So that for me, it's an A.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a risk trading away a very known quantity in Lynn Williams, although coming off injury, but seemed to be back to normal at the end of the year. And we'll probably see her. I know with the national team, Blanco had said she was fully up to speed, so there's no need to even restrict her in anything. So she should have been ready day one. So it's a little bit of a risk trading away that known quantity for an unknown. And I don't want to say unknown, but it's still potential. There's a lot of potential that's not realized just yet.
Mhm.
But we'll see how that turns out. If it turns out even remotely like we think it is, it's a
Slam
absolutely
dunk home run.
straight A. First round was definitely a straight A. The rest of the rounds, I'll probably would say a C plus, because they're just, a lot of them are unknowns and flyers, and maybe could have taken higher rated players, but it's what you see in them, not what 10 other talking heads kind of people see. But yeah, that buzz, man. I think the only team that could have even remotely equalized the buzz would have been North Carolina, and that was negative.
Lots of negative. Lots of people questioning what the Courage are doing. Lots of people questioning what the Spirit were doing as well. Also, man, if you're the Portland Thorns, you calling a timeout on the last pick of the draft just to trade it away for 10K in allocation money, that is like the biggest middle finger to everybody else, which is just kind of makes me chuckle. So yep, that's what you do when you're winning like that.
Yeah, they're so deep, they don't need those picks anyway. But I turned off the draft after the 47th pick. I don't even know what happened after that. So I was like, why is this not updating? I looked a little bit later, like, why is it not updating? So I
realized, yes, they called a timeout to trade that pick. Made everybody thrilled. I think everybody was asking for the chaos in the trades early on, and then when we got to announcing the 7th trade of the draft, I think Berman was starting to get a few boos from the audience.
Yeah, but hey, it worked out for Kansas City, so screw everybody else. So yeah, buzz all this week, man. Dabinia, big moves in the draft, the trade.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of positive for the Current. I kept seeing somebody on Twitter saying that everybody's hating this trade with Lynn Williams for the second round pick. I didn't really see a lot of that myself, but I wasn't looking too closely for it. Did you see any?
Nope. I think a lot of people were like, holy cow. As Cardi B said, we make money moves, and that's what the Current did. That was a big time money move to do that and pull that off. That's what you do when you're gunning for it all and you're also thinking about the future at the same time. I don't know if it could have gone as perfectly as it did.
Fair enough. Anything else we need to talk about before we go? You got questions? Twitter questions.
We got a few Twitter questions. This one's from Colby Jack Soden at Colby Jack Soden. Yeah, I'm sorry, Colby, if I screwed this up, but asking for a way too early lineup prediction. Thad, give me your way too early KC Current 2023 lineup prediction for opening match of the season.
Oh man, that's fun. I will go. Let's see, 3-player back line, Ball, Merrick, and Weinbrenner.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, midfield of Mace and Delfava on the basically the wingbacks. Gautreau, Di Bernardo, and Dabinia, the triangle in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That only leaves me 2, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Where's Alex Wara playing?
Oh, actually, I would put if I'm gonna do that, I will put Loera. I put Weinbrenner, Loera, and Ball myself.
Okay.
And then as people need rest, move Loera forward because she can play every minute.
Yep.
The forwards though, Mimi Larson and some person named Michelle Cooper.
Interesting. I think I will go with a back 3 of Laura, Ball, and Merrick. 80 French and goal, obviously. Wing backs the same. Midfield the same with Gautreau and Di Bernardo and Dabinia. And then the attack. I think for opening day, I don't know about Mimi Larson for opening day, but I will go with Cooper. I'll go Cooper and Kaiser. Sounds like a
But
Sounds like a nice law firm up top. Have some
can
fun there.
you, if we wound the clock back 6 months, could you imagine we would be not saying Kristen Hamilton as a lock for one of those spots?
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part too. Is you know, there's so many like Loera, not Loera, Lo Labanza. Like how is she not a lock in the midfield? But that's just what's happened in this offseason is they've leveled up in depth significantly, and a lot of their starters are now depth pieces from a team that went to that had a 13 game unbeaten streak and finished second, a finalist in the NWSL playoffs. I mean, that's insane to me. So yeah, it's a new dawn for the Current in that aspect. But yeah, that's a heck of a feeling to think of, like, wow, how can I justify mentally putting CC Kaiser on the bench? I don't know if I'm there yet, but maybe Mimi Larson will convince me otherwise.
Actually, I think of the players we mentioned, CC Kaiser is probably the easiest one for me to justify putting to the bench of Hamilton, Kaiser, and Lowe. I mean,
yeah,
and Lowe's probably the second easiest, and then Hamilton. But I
yeah,
didn't name any of them, so I guess I put them all on the bench.
yeah. Shame on you. Okay, last one. This one is from Cameron Trushniski at Cameron 3Gs on Twitter. How many will actually make the roster, and what will happen to the ones that don't?
I have to go back and look at the count, but I want to say prior to the trade, there was 23 players on the roster, I think.
Correct.
We still don't have Desi Scott as a known either. If they can get her back, they will probably sign her.
Yeah.
Again, she may not be a starter in this team. Probably not a starter, or at least probably not the first choice starter. But of the 8 draft picks, I say 4.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
First rounders, one of the keepers, and one of the center backs.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. In the event of an injury or anything like that, I could also see that maybe changing. Maybe somebody comes into camp that's not in shape too, and or something happens and it's time to have to make a trade, make a move. Those types of things happen. Just ask Jose Maury, ask Sporting KC what that's like when players don't show up, and sometimes it happens. Inevitably, it happens at times. So I'll be curious to see what happens when the team gets into camp and what happens when they break from Florida. So I think some of those moves will get made. But this is a team that I expect. I don't expect there to be much more added to it. So you take 8 picks, only half of them are making the roster. You've created a lot of competition for yourself if you're the Current.
And like we talked about Desi still being out there as a free agent, there's still a dozen or 20 free agents that have not signed, at least last time I looked. And there are 3 or 4 of them that are at least decent quality center backs. I don't know if they fit with the team, but there are still at least 3 or 4 decent center backs out there who could be a choice that pops up, if they get desperate to just play and, take a minimal salary. So they have a lot of options right now. One thing that people in our position always does is we're always really optimistic when new players come in, drafts happen. We're always looking at this like glass is overflowing, not even, half full kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a fear of that with these players?
It's a good question. Yes and no. Because I really only expect one player to be thrust into a significant amount of playing time, and that would be Michelle Cooper. And if Michelle Cooper fails to be who she is or who we think she's going to be, then we're defaulting to players that still help the team win 13 straight games and make it to the second overall, or the second made it as a runner-up in the final. the luxury of utilizing your draft picks in a way that you can either give them time to develop and not expect a ton out of them on the field in the first year is something that good teams for the most part have. And when those players do come in, they're put in positions where they have a high chance of succeeding, and in short spurts where they're not receiving so much exposure or in situations that are too high leverage for them. I think that's a good thing to be able to utilize a lot of these picks. I could see Spaanstra getting a decent amount of time this year later on, but it's probably a good thing that she doesn't play as much. Everything I heard last year about Elise Bennett was that they were forced into a situation where they had to play her a lot earlier than they wanted to, with the way that the injuries felt. And she had a ton of minutes. She had 24 appearances. She had a lot of substitute appearances as well, and was a very good super sub down the stretch. But there's to be forced into playing time, into significant playing time so early, with the injuries that they had, I think at times maybe didn't allow her to get a really good feel for the speed of the pro game. And I think she did well in those situations, but question is how much better could she have been, and if she had been able to, if she wasn't maybe had to be forced into positions where it wasn't as high leverage in those moments. And I think you look at players like Izzy Rodriguez as a wing back, and you look at a player even like Chardonnay Coran, both those players were mostly able to play in situations that were positive situations and where their exact skill set, their strong suits were needed, as they were learning the ropes and developing as a pro. And being able to be put in it now, we look at those and we say those are successful pieces that we can think about in the future, as they are kind of depth pieces on the squad. And so with a lot of these players, I mean, we're talking about, we know, we can assume Michelle Cooper will be on the roster. We can assume Spaanstra will be on the roster. There's 2 of these picks. If we say that 4 out of the 8, we're talking about the third goalkeeper and the very last center back on a roster. And that's like, okay, that makes, that means that those aren't positions that you give to players that you expect to play and start every single game. And so I think they're in a position that allows themselves to give time to most of these players, if they are, quote, not who they think they're going to be right away. And I understand too, like we could project all we want. We could project all we wanted about Elise Bennett too. And maybe she never turns into the player that her ceiling was going to be. And so I think there's a lot of that happens, period. And so, but when you're in a position where you don't have to rely on those players to make you successful on the field right away, majority of those players that they drafted, I think they're in a spot where they can handle them not being who they were hoping that they would be, or them never reaching their quote potential, if that makes sense.
Speaking of Elise Bennett, I'm not sure if we mentioned that she was traded earlier in the week for $150,000 in allocation money,
and the 23rd overall pick.
Yeah. Bennett is a player that I really liked, but I liked her speed, her physicalness, her willing to go for the ball. But I just saw a comment comparing her to Michelle Cooper, and I'm like, there is no comparison there. Bennett was nowhere. I'm not trying to be mean here. She's nowhere near the finisher that Cooper is. Bennett, if you go back and look at her stats in college, she had a terrible finishing rate, but she created lots of chances because she just outran, outbodied college players. When it came to the pro game, she didn't do it as much. She still did it, but just not as much. And her role was probably intended to be a late sub and come in and finish out games, apply a lot of pressure. And that was going to be her game. That was going to be her chance to contribute and score goals at those moments. Michelle Cooper is a completely different player in that she finishes with a very high rate. She creates chances, but she finishes like 40% of them or something like that. I know I saw one thing saying 70% conversion rate, but I don't know how that number jives with the numbers that I looked at by shots on goals and goals, but she finishes. So there's a big, huge difference in that kind of player.
I even think in technical ability too. I mean, that's, Elise Bennett was a very raw prospect with a high ceiling if she could put it all together. When they drafted her, that kind of alludes to the whole, they had to play her a lot earlier than they wanted to, because I don't know if she was quite ready for the role that they were asking her and needing her to play, because she hadn't developed that ability yet. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Cooper, which, like I said, I think allows them for the most part to be in a position where they are okay if these picks don't turn out. That's what happens when you have 8 picks too. You can take the gambles and do all that stuff. So
yeah, they're not going to all turn out. I've seen that way too many times. There's just not that many roster spots. But hey, need some expansion teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any last words?
I did have one other question on here that says, seems like I got a lot of goalkeepers, but I'm new to this, from at Michelle_KC Michelle, as long as you've been listening to this podcast at this point, I think we pretty much covered that one. Competition for the 3rd spot. That's it. Move on, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, they can try to keep a 4th one around just for World Cup time frame, but they could, honestly, there's so many keepers out there, they can always bring one in from somewhere to train and be the 3rd spot temporarily. So I'm never too worried about finding a 3rd keeper.
Yep.
But I'm also not the one having to find one. So, but one thing they did mention in during some of the discussion at the draft was that there are not a lot of young keepers on rosters right now. There's a lot of veteran keepers, especially the starting roles. And it's been hard for young keepers to break into teams and get any time. Maybe Casey is going to try to develop a extra young keeper and trade off in a year. But
yeah,
that would be pretty difficult to have the roster spot and the time. So,
yep. Agreed.
All right. Thanks anybody for listening. Sorry for however weirdly I have to edit these 2 pieces together, because we dropped a little bit in the middle and try to pick up afterwards. But thanks again for always listening, and let us know if there's any other questions that we can answer, anything else we can do better. Listen, subscribe, whatever, like, subscribe, all those things that everybody always says at the beginning and ending of things that I'm not very good as salesperson. Thank you, Daniel, and I'll talk to you later. We're out.
Sir.